Welcome everybody to the start of the spoopy month of Movie Club, where we go down the line and sort of pick our favourite spooky things. I know in doing that we're going to get a double bill of Chris's picks, but there we go. But it made more sense, I guess, to go partly chronologically and also partly so we don't have AJ doing double duty. I only just realised it sort of after the fact. But yeah, we start
Really?
off back in 72. What were you going to say, AJ?
So, regardless of how it went, at least we know the last one in October and the first one in November are going to be two movies that have nothing in common, at the
Yes.
very least.
Yes. Very much so. So yeah, technically 1972, although most people saw it in 73 in Horror Express. The spaghetti horror, I guess if you want to call it that. Hold on.
You order four of those.
Yeah, save it. I'll do it later.
What?
I'm doing the show. Right. Got that sorted. So yeah, I mean, like, part of the story behind all this stuff is fascinating when you take into account the guy that plays the inspector died after he filmed all his stuff, and the guy that dubbed it died in a freak car crash before actually released in New York. So I'm not saying that role was cursed, but
I mean, especially given what that role represents in the movie, it's even
yeah,
more eerie.
yeah, certainly is. It's even more sort of like, oh no, something happened here. I do love the fact that on the official English release, which I went to both that and the one that's on YouTube, because the YouTube one is as originally intended in the Spanish language. So we get the actual credit of Eugenio Martin directing the project. Whereas on the Amazon release and on the official Arrow video stuff, he's mysteriously become Gene Martin. We've anglicised the name. I think pretty much everything got anglicised apart from well, I think the screenplay was anglicised names and the director was anglicised. It helped that the producer was actual American, Bernard Gordon. And then, like, got uncredited writing from Philip Yordan, who won the Oscar back in the day for, I think it was Broken Lance. Although that was more of a Joseph Mankiewicz written thing, but I think that was in the middle of the whole blacklisting McCarthy stuff, so Mankiewicz never really got credited for it, and it was Yordan that got it. But it seemed to be there was actually sort of I want to say it was a trilogy. This, I think it was called Psychomania, which was a British film, and then Pancho Villa, which was an actual Spanish spaghetti western. So I guess over the course of it, he went from like Spanish to Spanish, at least in terms of somewhere around that with the release. But yeah, it's like, and of course the interesting thing is it basically, to some extent, is The Thing. I mean, it's loosely adapted off the same story. Certainly, when you got to sort of the elements of like, I mean, it isn't technically shape shifting, but like possessions are the equivalent of shape shifting. Like the possession angle that we get. um, and although I was sort of like at the first time, I was like, is it a horror movie because of the effects? Because the makeup on like the missing link, as we'll call it, as I think Christopher basically describes it as, the makeup on that was like pretty bad, but like the rest of the makeup we see with the blinding and everything, and the actual sort of eyes made to sort of go on the human face sort of thing, is actually pretty impressive for what we got in the early 70s, I would say.
Yeah. And stuff like the smooth brain and like the way they use the eyes. That's fucking disgusting, and I absolutely mean that as a compliment. Like you can actually, it's like you just look at that smooth brain and you know what it feels like, and that's fucked up in a really good way.
But yeah, like it's an intriguing story as well, because like with it being set in 1906 and it's the Trans-Siberian Express from Shanghai to Moscow, I'm guessing the priest is there for obvious reasons. Whether the implication is that basically he might be Rasputin, because I'm trying to remember if Rasputin came around about that time, because obviously it would coincide with the Russian Revolution, like 10, 12 years
Yeah,
later.
I'm thinking it had to be pretty close to that.
Yeah. So I'm wondering whether that's not brought up anywhere in the Wikipedia, but I was getting very much, probably just because I knows how many trailers for Argyle, and it just makes me flash back to all the Kingsman's films, and then of course the King's Man, which sort of had Rasputin in that. It kind of made me wonder whether that was the inspiration, because he was seen as sort of a crazy zealot in his time.
Yeah, that never occurred to me. But that makes a lot of sense now that you mention it.
Yeah.
I actually want to. Whenever I go back to the movie now, I think I want to use that as canon.
Well, because it sort of left, did he die in the fire, or is it actually canon, and that's why people couldn't kill him? Which is intriguing, because you'd have thought if Rasputin was killed supposedly, multiple times and then chucked in the river, it would have been dark, so he would have possessed them. So maybe not. I don't. But like the way it just starts with, because this would have been filmed what, months after Wicker Man? Because I think Wicker Man was filmed 72.
Oh, that might make sense then. Yeah, because Wicker Man came out in 73, so, and this was, yeah, it'd have to be pretty close.
It would have been around then. Because like with a speech at the start with him being from the Royal Geological Society, it sounded sort of a bit like, this sounds like we just borrowed a bit from the Wicker Man. He's gonna
what I also
go ahead.
What I also love about that opening narration is how, just in general, when movies do this, because sometimes like opening narration and stuff like that, especially if it's talking in past tense, it can kind of show its hand a little too much. But like Dark City or something like that. But I love narration like this that opens it because all he talks about is a catastrophe with no details and how he takes responsibility. And it's like it's really intriguing to see this group going on an expedition, and the guy that's in charge of the expedition is telling us ahead of time, just so you know, we really fucked up, and you're about to see how that went down. And I love the way when you can do that and make it intriguing without giving away your hand or all the details. I love when they kind of set the tone that way.
Yeah, because it's sort of the thing is like, whose guilt actually is it? What's it about? Is it about sort of this missing link alien life form, or is it, uh, you know, all the deaths that occurred because of the discovery of a life form, or was it
Yeah,
in relation to the Cossacks basically chucking the thing off the train, meaning that all those undead people were definitely dead.
well, they kind of to jump way ahead to the ending actually. There is an interesting dilemma there when it's like I really love that moment when it I guess we'll call it is inside the monk and he's talking to him like really like I feel like this is like the most articulate we've seen it up to this point, and it's basically explaining to Christopher Lee like, do you want to keep me around and I can give you like all of the secrets of the universe, even though you might be risking that I'm going to just keep killing people. And like it's a very brief, but I like that there is like a scientist's dilemma there of, do you discover more secrets about the way everything works and where we came from while risking a lot of death in the process? Like how much death is it worth to potentially know all this stuff? But then that like immediately goes into everybody rising from the dead and all that. But for a moment there, I like that they threw that in there.
It's the old bit from that Doctor Who Genesis of the Daleks episode where the Doctor has the sort of two wires in order to create the circuit. Uh, to kill off the Dalek race, but then of course he basically is like, do I have the right? Because if I don't do this, there's a lot of people that are united in harmony in fighting the Daleks that never will, so who knows what will happen? Is there the right to sort of change time? Um, and it's that sort of thing that is the quandary that Saxton is sort of confronted with. It's like, you want to know about sort of missing link in human evolution and all this stuff. Because in essence, it's implied that the aliens have all been here. It's just the alien entities. This one's sort of been left behind because the transmission went, and it needs to try and find a garage to repair its ship, but it doesn't know how.
It's like if E.T. was a slasher movie. Is basically what this
To
is.
some extent, yeah, pretty much. Um. Oh, I forgot the monk is actually with the Polish count and his wife. So yeah, that definitely is Rasputin. I've only just realised that. I just thought he was a priest along for the ride. I didn't know he was actually part of the
Yeah, he like
count's
works for them or
entourage.
something. Yeah.
Because he was there, like it's also like brilliantly sort of. I didn't give this much credit, but like as soon as from the start, where the Chinese lockpicker gets possessed, but of course with the whole the brain knowledge being transferred over, that's how the alien can sort of bend over a nail and suddenly start picking the lock.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that either. I love the escape scene a lot. I love the fact that there's like even when the baggage guy comes into it, there's no speaking. It's just us watching the creature like blindly figure out how to get it, and the way it like tries matches first before it finds a nail, and it's like this whole sort of drawn out thing. And I love how we see the escape basically in real time.
What I do find fascinating, though, is I'm guessing the implication this is all being illuminated by the guard that's like we're just watching this. Why does it take him like 30 seconds to go? The hell? I'm gonna keep watching. This is getting pretty. I'm gonna keep. I'm not gonna do anything. Like,
Yeah, that's I think that's another thing also is that I just kind of love how for a while before it actually really takes on the well this predates Carpenter's The Thing by 10 years,
yeah,
and
because
then
that would
Howard
have been
Hawks' production was like
80.
20 years before it.
That would have been 82, and the thing I think was. I'll
I think the original I think the
Josie
original was
brings
like
it up in the
51.
stuff. Yeah, Thing from Another World was 51. So I'll get to your stuff, Josie and Spencer and everybody else in chat in a minute. But
Yeah, I love before it kind of takes on what 10 years later a lot of people will recognize as The Thing, where it takes on different forms and different people. Um, that it's essentially just the combination of a monster movie and a slasher movie. And the first half can feel kind of that simple. Like it kind of goes back to in multiple like to different subgenres of horror that really had their own moment and kind of combines them a little bit. But then goes and I remember the first time I saw it being a little disappointed when it kind of stopped feeling like a full-on monster movie because the we didn't see the humanoid like in much of its form anymore when it started going. This is before I could appreciate kind of the thing concept. Um, and that's see, I love the way that this movie utilizes like different parts of the genre, and it kind of feels like a bunch of different kinds of horror in one is really great. And the idea of having like, some of the horror legends in it, it feels like this sort of culmination of the genre from like the 30s to the 70s. And it's like it took everything that was like the great subgenres of horror in that time and kind of made this one product out of them.
yeah, because you've got sort of a somewhat gentle sort of Giallo style, like what you got with Argento and all that, and of course like the zombie. Was it Zombie Flesh Killers? I think it was called over here, or Zombie, that sort of did stuff in or around the Night of the Living Dead, sort of George Romero stuff. Trying to in on that Italy did.
Like the are you talking about like the Fulci movies?
That sort of thing, yeah. Um, that's sort of what I guess it transitioned into when people were sick of the spaghetti westerns. That's what like the Spanish do horror, which in retrospect again harkens back to the 30s, where you know people may disagree with me, but I think the Spanish Dracula is better than the Bela Lugosi one in terms of sort of fear and aura.
Tony Todd agrees with you, actually. I do know that. I guess the Spanish Dracula like really influenced Tony Todd's acting, is what he was saying. I like your term spaghetti horror. I think I'm gonna.
It sort of does feel that way because you can tell like practically everybody is like, oh, I am speaking English. I know how to speak, even though what I'm actually doing. For people that are just listening to us, I'm mouthing the words instead because you can tell how much of this is post production. I wonder whether they had to do whether the guy that played the inspector did know English, but they had to dub him in because when they wanted him to do the dubbing, he'd already passed. But in which
Yeah,
case,
because
then
I
you
was
had even a different style of crossover, because the dubbing was done by Roger Delgado, who played the Master to John Pertwee's third Doctor, and he's the you know the dub is up against the dub of the actual Peter Cushing, who played, I think the official term is Doctor Who, because they were unlicensed, but they needed to make money off of it. The two Doctor Who films that Peter Cushing did back in the 60s. So there's a lot of degrees of separation here. Not
it's a,
just, the amount, multiple times that Hammer got. Because I'm trying to remember how many. I think it was two, maybe three Frankenstein films that did as the monster, with Cushing as the Doctor himself, I think. And then, of course, the
yeah,
multiple Draculas as well.
yeah, I loved. There's just something about watching this movie, and it's not just the pleasure of seeing, Lee and Cushing like it always is, but like the fact that they're like Dracula and Van Helsing, and now when you watch them in this, they're just two scientists with a really petty rivalry, which
Yeah,
is kind of hilarious. Like just the way Cushing like almost dismisses him, like, oh yeah, he dabbles in fossils and bones, and it's like you can just see the pettiness in Cushing through like the whole thing.
here's this hot lady that I have sort of affection for. I'm barging in. This is my ticket.
Yeah,
I
the fact
don't
that they get
care.
bunked together too. It almost became a comedy when they got bunked together.
Well, certainly, like, yeah, even with the blooming assistant with Cushing, when she's like, right, we need you for your medical opinion. It's like, why do you need me? And then it's like, it's an autopsy. And then she's like, now you're talking. Like, what's she into? I'm a bit concerned.
I do like the dismissive attitude from Cushing also, where it's like, we need your help with this guy, and it's like, well, he's dead. I can't, he's not going to get any help from me.
Yeah. And like, when she brings up, oh, this evolution stuff, I don't believe in it. It's like, it's fact. Believe in it. Like, yeah, you think your monster did it? And he sort of like resigns and, yeah, the monster did it. I don't care. Like,
Also, by the way, since we brought up the autopsy, it's worth noting when we were talking about the gross shit that this movie does really well. When they open the skull to reveal like the smooth brain, it's like, all right, it's gross, but that's fine. You know the part that really gets me though is when the creature opens the skull, and then there's that sound effect when he puts the skull back. That just really gets under my skin in a good, and I guess in a good way since that's the effect. But
it's the nails on the chalkboard style. Like, whoa. I mean, even sort of a lot of the sound also does the job there. Like when we have the first reveal of the eyes on the lockpicker at the start, you get something akin to a train whistle, but
and that's also the whistling in general. When is it the Countess that's playing the piano or something, and you can just hear something whistling along. And I don't think we ever like reveal that the creature is what's whistling. That's just kind of something we know that they don't have to tell us explicitly. And then that's like the last thing we hear when we're just seeing the train on fire at the end before it cuts to credits. Creepy whistling goes a long way with me. That's
again, spaghetti western style.
yeah.
It's like, it all in. And then, of course, just in case we thought it was gonna get boring, random Telly Savalas cameo comes in like 20 minutes from the end.
Yeah.
He's just being a dick.
I love how I love how they were really banking on how recognizable Telly Savalas' head is, because like half of his screen time is on his back,
Yeah.
but we know who he. They know that we know who he is.
I
There's
even
even
like that when we had the resurrected corpses bit. I swear, at the very back of like the line, just as they're all trying to head to everybody that's at the back of the train, there is a bald head like going with them, but like right at the very back, right at the very end, it's like he even did that. Like, you know, he
it's like
didn't have to.
when they all converge in the car and the scene starts on the back of his head, it feels like a reveal moment, but it's like, oh no, we just met him like 2 scenes ago. And then in that same scene when he talks to the inspector, who is now the creature at this point, I think, he puts his arm around him and turns him away from the camera, and they talk facing away from the camera. And it's like they really love the idea of how recognizable he is without his face.
I mean, just as much as like, you know, the royalty come in and like, you know, we're not commoners, and he's just like, oh, brilliant, you know, let's our guests have, you know, their privacy, and then just gets them his shot, does it, and then just chucks it, and they just have to ad lib like Foley of like the glass hitting the floor or whatever, smashing, or I don't know. Because part of me just feels that's an ad lib from Telly. He was just taking advantage of the fact he was getting paid for however few minutes that he is going to be on. Because I think it was part of like a free film deal with the producers that he'd do. Because apparently he was also in Pancho Villa, but more as sort of the lead. So I guess as like a supporting thing. He just showed up for 20 minutes as a random Cossack soldier lead. At first, I thought was like, is he some sort of like evil sort of like person that shows up because of him being, you know, the Count? Because it's credited. The first time I think I've seen the equivalent of "and" big name without using the word "and," because it literally has like the supporting characters and then Telly Savalas as the Count. We don't need an "and."
What I really love about his inclusion, because it does almost seem like it was really last minute, but the great thing about that is it's basically like you were saying, I think, where they'd reached the hour mark, and it was like they were under the impression they were probably about to reach a dry spot. So in this, usually when people get to this spot, they'll try to fill in the blanks with like action or something like that, or it'll just kind of submit to meandering. But one of the best ways to fix that problem when you feel like you're about to hit a dry spot is to just bring in a flashy character and an actor that you know can do that, and that will do the work. That will fill in the void easily until you get to the destination. So I love that they just decided to throw another character in it rather than like get lost knowingly.
I guess they also felt like putting him in it's subversion as well, because he's like, oh, it's a recognizable name, they're going to be alive at the end. Not realizing that after about 15 minutes, no, he's getting the white eyes.
Because another time when a flashy character played by a big actor comes in at like the third act, typically it's a character that's built up by the other characters. But to my understanding, the only build up to his character is his name in the credits.
Yeah,
because the character's not mentioned at all until he's introduced, but
because
you're still
the
so
telegram
it kind of
comes through, uh,
yeah.
which I guess who sent the telegram? I'm guessing Saxon, because the conductor that was about to send it, got done and chucked out the window. Because in
They
which
were
case, how did the message come through? And then at the same time, how did the message get through about derailing the thing when nobody on the train reported it because they all got? So
I had a few questions. Like, I mean, it's one of those movies though where I feel like it diminishes the experience to think
yeah,
too much about it. Sort of like the idea of using the eye and being able to see, we can see what the creature has seen because of its eye, and it's like that's something that people gave Wild Wild West shit for because of how ridiculous that is.
yeah,
But here we can say, well, it's an alien, so
yeah,
logic doesn't matter.
yeah.
But I was wondering, we're under the impression that because the thing I think the reason that when I was talking before about how before it basically turns into the thing, the first time I saw it way back in the day, I was disappointed when it kind of ceased to be a monster because the monster started taking more forms. But because the great thing about the thing, at least Carpenter's the thing, is that we never see it in its initial form. We only ever see it in other forms. And I was trying to think, so the humanoid creature that they bring out of the ice, that's just another form, isn't it? Like
Hmm.
that's not like a starting form. I like we're like it was inside, like this humanoid thing existed and then the alien got inside it and then it froze. Are we under impression that's what happened?
That's a good question.
Because
Um,
the thing that confuses me about this is when he's in the inspector's body, but his arm is still like the humanoid creature, and how like when he like comes out, it's that arm of that
yeah.
creature. So I wasn't sure if like this creature's the beginning or if it's another vessel or I don't know. Like I said, it feels like it diminishes the fun of a movie like this to try to
Yeah.
over explain it.
Yeah, it's yeah, thinking about it, I sort of don't want to think about. I see what you mean. It's like it's preferably like leave it ambiguous as to whether these aliens were sort of humanoid esque or
Yeah.
whether like some. The problem is like would it have adapted into sort of like a triceratops or a thing because we acknowledge that it's seen dinosaurs and it's seen
Which by the way, that I was saying people bash that being a plot point in like Wild Wild West, but it's like in this movie that's actually really cool. Like the reveal that it was around then
yeah
is
it's not it clearly and if it's dinosaurs it can't be millions of years. It has to be I mean we know the extinction was 65 million, so like how long has it been here sort of thing, and what has basically in that essence it's sort of similar esque to sort of Doctor Who in that Time Lords are supposed to only have sort of 13 regenerations before they pass, but the Master basically at points when he realised he was getting to the generations, of which ironically in the Five Doctors the form that he has in that looks very similar to the monster in in this. Basically, oh no, it actually might have been a different Doctor Who episode, but either way, he basically takes somebody else's life and sort of possesses them and takes their form, therefore sort of cheating the system and getting a new ability to have a new set of sort of 13 cycles. So I'm wondering whether basically, as you sort of saw in everything, the entity basically goes through the lifespan of whatever it is, and then its last opportunity. In essence, in all those times, as long as it's dark, the thing can basically take the persona of what's basically attacking it. So in that essence, it's sort of, sort of semi going up the food chain. But yeah, that's also something that I have now thought about this, and it's getting interest. It's getting more interesting than it was ever intended to be. It was Spanish sort of, let's make money. Yeah, we got a budget of 300,000. Let's do something with it. I'll quickly go to the chat, also load everything up in case other stuff has come in. Spencer leads off with Horror Express, Yahoo, and then saw 10 as positive reviews. What kind of world are we living in? Well, that's what happens when you actually make interesting horror. The plot with that has strengths, I think, that other ones in the franchise didn't. Josie says, happy spooky season. For the month of October, I'm currently reading The Uninvited by Dorothy McCardle, which was adapted into a film in 1944. Cushing arrived in Spain for filming and immediately told the producer that he couldn't do the death as he felt it was too soon after his wife's death. It was only Lee convincing him to stay on by reminiscing about other times and other movies that they'd had that basically convinced Cushing to stick around. Part of me wonders whether they actually referenced that in the script. Because there's that bit, the dining car scene, when he's just looking at her, the thief woman. Spy. Do we know if she's a thief or a spy? I can't remember.
I think they were leaning towards spy.
Yeah. But sort of there seems to be some sort of affection there. And she says, what are you thinking about? And Cushing says, I'm afraid I can't divulge that. I'm wondering whether it's like, are we bringing in the fact that Cushing's missing his wife as an actual sort of plot point for his character?
That's actually kind of touching, but it's also of this moment where Lee and him reminisce as Lee convinced him to do the movie. Holy fuck, that's a conversation I want to hear. We at least need a transcript or something.
I mean, to be fair, when any time Christopher talks, we need a transcript. He's just brilliant. It was said that Cushing was so devastated by the death by the time the movie was shot, he'd suffer from night panics. In order to make his nights easier, so he wouldn't be alone when the attacks happened, Lee used to sleep in the same bed as company. So even more sort of camaraderie from the legend that is Christopher Lee. Yes.
So now there's a touching undertone to the scene where they realize they're sleeping in the same room, the same compartment.
To some extent. Savalas was paid $22,000 for his short stint on the film. The producer was delighted to get him for such a low price. Although it was part of a deal, so maybe it was, most of the money actually went to the Pancho Villa thing. Savalas was equally delighted as he used the cash to get a 7-year lease on a West End apartment for his then girlfriend. Everyone's a winner! While the film may intentionally or unintentionally have a similar plot to the classic novella Who Goes There by John W. Campbell Jr., which was first adapted as The Thing from Another World, and then The Thing, and then The Thing, the video game, and then The Thing, the remake of The Thing, which was the remake of The Thing. Yes! Horror Express is not an official adaptation, nor does it credit Campbell or his story. I mean, to be, there's God knows how many, one of the writers, Philip Jordan, was uncredited on The Thing. And then they use, English pseudonym names, at least on the English release, from what I saw. He asks who would win in a fight, The Thing or the Horror Express creature? Part of me wants to say Horror Express because the Horror Express one has the ability to reanimate and have its own control, which I don't think we see The Thing do it.
I mean, this is like, I didn't want to use a Pokemon reference, but here we go.
Pokemon!
It's like having Ditto fight Ditto. I don't know how to answer that.
I feel with the sort of, like, the puppetry sort of style of reanimation and sort of control stuff, it's something that we don't see from The Thing in any of the adaptations. So in that essence, it's sort of got the one up. I'd say that it'd have the one up, because anything that it sort of took down with the eyes, in theory, it could basically have a sort of expendable flesh armor sort of thing to be used. In which case, I just realised, if the entity had the power to reanimate the does that mean the Chinese guy that's back at the Shanghai station suddenly just got up at the same time? How much power? What is the zonal range of the entity's power? Is the guy that got chucked out the window of The Thing just randomly in the snow going, ah?
That does feel very open-ended. We need an answer to that, actually.
During production, there was only one set available for the interior of the train cars, which you'll be unsurprised to know was Pancho Villa. We doubling it up. Supposedly, the director claimed that the train was the same train that was used on Nicholas and Alexandra. And basically, the producer that obtained the train set was like, well, we've got to find a way to use this somehow. And then at the same time, there was also rumours that it was Dr. Zhivago's train and stuff, but the producer said no, it was the Pancho Villa model, because at certain bits you can sort of tell that isn't a real train. It's a Super Mario Nation double up.
Because Nicholas and Alexandra seems plausible, because wasn't Nicholas and Alexandra just the year before, in 71?
71, yeah.
Yeah, so that would have at least been plausible. Zhivago's probably reaching.
But yeah, and then because there was no further room available on stage, as sort of hinted at from, all of the scenes for each car had to be shot at once, and then the set would have to be reconstructed for the next car. That's why when you see him rushing through the car one at a time when it gets to the sort of passenger quarters bit, it looks like the same thing, because it legitimately is, but we have to make it look like it's different carriages. I'm guessing this is American release wise. It was released 2 days after Dracula AD 1972. So there's your double bill. There we go. According to Eugenio Martin, Gene Martin, whatever you want to call him, most of Telly's dialogue and performance was improvised. Yeah, it seems very much so. Even the way that he's sort of addressing his soldiers in the, I was going to say prison, but it's like that he's just lounging about in like the prison area of wherever the building is that they come in from. He's like, that's where I'm going to sleep.
I'm gonna assume it was also his idea to have his character wake up to next to a random woman.
Probably.
Actually, I want that woman he woke up next to be the woman he bought the apartment for.
Yeah, find an excuse to get her involved. Do you want a cameo? Who's your baby? Oh wait, that's a good line. I think I'll use it.
Okay, a cameo in an apartment, that'd be a pretty good score.
And notice though, it was ex-girlfriend. So if she kept it in the, well, I guess they wouldn't have had prenups in the 70s. The train interior and the train model used were the same sets used for Pancho Villa, made by the same producer and director who just finished production and also featured Telly. Various roles are dubbed, so Robert Rietti dubbed the monk, Olive Gregg dubbed all women. So she had to have the actual range to like make people sound different. And then the police inspector by the late great Roger Delgado. Which again was also interesting because thinking back to the first Master story that we get, he has some sort of like telepathic mind control thing. So it all links. Bryce says, when I first started the movie, I was confused with the credits, then realised it was made in Spain, so a Spanish film not in the Spanish language, this would not be the first time. Yeah, I mean, that's why I was confused at first, because it was like, okay, let's watch the Amazon one with English credits at the start, but there's no subtitles, so I'd like to know. Annoyingly, the subtitles on the YouTube version not great. I don't even, if it's still on iPlayer, I might have to sort of watch it and see whether they've got good subtitles on that one. But yeah, when everything was sort of in, and you can tell they half-arsed it, because when you got to the captions for the prequel bit, when they find the missing link thing in the Himalayan mountains or whatever in China, or it might not be the Himalayas, it was the Appalachian, I can't remember, but the Manchurian mountains. And then when we see the Peking station as it would have been at the time, rather than Shanghai, that was all in Spanish still. They didn't bother changing the. They put the opening and the closing credits. Their normal language in the UK release, but the rest of the bits in between, nah. Yes. This also happened to Bry when they were watching The Others. Oh yeah, I forgot. Yeah, because that's English, but then it's all Spanish, credits and everything. Cushing and Lee were huge fans of Looney Tunes and would often imitate the voices of characters to one another, and once asked to leave a theatre showing a Sylvester and Tweety cartoon because they were laughing so loud.
I just need footage of all of these interactions.
trying to work out which one would be Tweety Pie and which one would be Sylvester. Somehow I think Lee better to do the Tweety Pie voice, like, because I feel that Cushing might have more of a control of the lisp that Sylvester would have. I don't know. Have any of you been on Amtrak trains?
Once, yeah.
What's the British equivalent to Amtrak in the UK? I guess certain lines that like run long distance. I think that's the closest. That is a political point that's causing a lot of trouble, literally with as we speak. So I'll be careful around the one bit of it that's partly under construction, and they want to apparently stop construction of the other bit, which will peeve a lot of people off within certain areas of the country.
Oh, you lost sound again.
I want to say the closest train to the Trans-Siberian that would be here is the Caledonian Sleeper, that either travels to, I can't remember, it's from Scotland to London or vice versa. I mean, it does both, but I don't know which is traditionally the. I think the Sleeper goes down to London because basically you start late and then you get to London in time for sort of 8 or 9 o'clock, traditional work start time. So I want to say probably in that direction. That's the closest, I think. And occasionally they do run it sort of vintage style steam train thing, but most of the times it's just a train that runs not as fast as some of the high speed lines do over here. There aren't really that many historical train lines around, I think, across most of America that I can think of, because so much of it is just used for general sort of freight and passenger stuff anyway. Don't get me wrong, there is obviously heritage lines out there, but it seems to be less of a scale to what I see with other stuff. Orient Express, Trans-Siberian sort of does run to some extent, just not with a big chunky steam train now.
I can describe my Amtrak experience as obnoxious. The ride itself was smooth, but passenger wise, other people wise, that was rough.
Sadly, not too surprised.
I was able to tune them out a little bit because I was able to watch one movie, which happened to be the Richard Pryor version of Brewster's Millions. So other than that, it was all. And I'm pretty sure somebody died in the bathroom, and we were pretty close to that, and yeah.
Some Peter Cushing trivia now to take us off that stuff. In 45, with no money for presents, he found a large piece of silk, cut it into a neat square, painted Dickens characters on it, and gave it to his wife as a present. She later loaned it to a friend who wore it to a party where it was seen by a textile manufacturer who gave Cushing a contract as a silk scarf designer. Among those he designed was some for the Festival of Britain and the coronation of Elizabeth II. Wow!
That was a hell of a train of events. No
Does
pun
everything.
intended.
Lucas originally planned to use archival footage of Cushing from Star Wars A New Hope for insertion into Revenge of the Sith. And then Disney went, nah, we'll do it 10 years later, but we'll CGI the shit out of it to make him look like some mummified corpse of Peter Cushing. What was that? This would have been, yeah, this would have made episode 3 Cushing's final, albeit posthumous, collaboration with Christopher Lee. But apparently none of the footage was suitable to Lucas's needs.
I
Therefore,
don't know.
Wayne Pygram was cast and made to wear prosthetic makeup so he'd resemble Cushing.
I'm trying to think if it's ever occurred to me before that both Lee and Cushing played Star Wars villains, or am I just now having that
You might
that
be.
epiphany?
It's annoying that we didn't get Peter Cushing in a Bond film, because then he could have been Bond villains. Um, Hammer characters. You know, like, the bingo card would fill up with another square. Um, and yeah, Josie does note that it was Rogue One that archive footage of Cushing digitally used to recreate a Tarkin performance. Which I would say, as I said, I don't think it delivered. It was kind of messy and like, you know, what mocap version of Cushing did we get? Because to me it looked like a very elderly Cushing rather than anything from 77. Oh, Bryce said it's ironic we're doing this movie with the main setting being a train because this past Saturday my local train store shut after 77 years. But not really the end because they're still doing an online store and their main train manufacturing line that they do. Okay. Cushing was nicknamed Props because of his skill with using props to make his performance more natural. Josie's also rented John Frankenheimer's as The Train. I have yet to watch it, but intending on doing so tomorrow. That's a good film. Good old Burt Lancaster. Cushing wrote to BBC programme Jim Will Fix It asking a new rose be bred and named after his late wife. Jimmy Savile agreed, and the process was filmed, ending with the creation of a new strain of yellow roses being presented to Peter Cushing. And then 30-something years later, we found out that Jimmy Savile was a not desirable man. And if you're in the UK, you'll find out that for yourself if you haven't already seen like the Netflix documentary and all the various things that have been around here over the years, because there's a drama with Steve Coogan playing Jimmy Savile coming, which I'm expecting to possibly be showing up at the Globes or whatever if it shows up at the right time. Maybe. I don't know when it's getting aired in America, whether it'll even classify with that. Cushing was an artist. As a young struggling actor, he supplemented his income by selling scarves that he hand painted and later had showings of his own watercolours. He only does everything. I can keep saying it. Have we ever seen Frankenstein Created Woman? Seems like it would pair well with Poor Things. Not to the sort of it's not a it's sort of an interesting. It's better a comparison to be alongside Bride of Frankenstein, because obviously Frankenstein Created Woman is sort of to some extent Bride of the Hammer version of Bride of Frankenstein. I would say that might be a better thing. I'm not sure about the whole Poor Things yet, until I get an accurate sort of detail as to what the actual plot of that is. Cushing considered The Blood Beast Terror to be the worst film he ever made. Okay, now I have to look into this.
Yeah.
Now we need to go to his filmography and see whether there's anything where I'm like, nah, that actually might be worse. I know it's his own sort of. There we go. I'm looking towards the end of his career. I forgot he had a cameo in Top Secret. That was. Legend of the Seven Golden Vampires, where he was Van Helsing, because of course he was. Oh, interesting. Blood Beast Terror was a double feature in America with Slaughter of the Vampires, apparently. I don't know. I mean, maybe, but like if you look at, I guess in terms of lead roles, maybe, but it depends. Like, you know, his little sort of cameos or minor bits in sort of like Moulin Rouge or Olivier's Hamlet, things like that. Curse of Frankenstein was his first lead, which was the year before Dracula, which I think is Horror of Dracula for the US audience. To some extent, though, yeah, because like even some of his later stuff in some television is that the one episode that he showed up of the Space 1999 was pretty good. The the pilot episode of the New Avengers, the Tale of the Unexpected episode that he's sort of quite quirky in. You know, there's a lot of nice stuff to some extent, and of course, you know, in his latter years when he wasn't sort of doing the stuff, he'd basically just show up on chat shows and whatever. Because again, there was like enough stories from him that it's like, yeah, he could just show up for 4 hours and we'd still be, you know, talking and whatever. Bry also says, since Peter Cushing is here, throwback to me saying in the Oscar nominations reactions after Rogue One got nominated for VFX, hashtag not my Peter Cushing. I remember that now, yep. It probably was for other stuff, but just for the fact that it was like, what the hell they did to him. Facially, he looked more like General Grievous, and that's a robot. It didn't look right. Some Lee trivia, relinking to other stuff. Lee offered Cushing the lead role in The Wicker Man, but turned it down due to scheduling conflicts.
That would have been interesting, but I can't really imagine anybody other than Lee in The Wicker Man.
Well, also at the same time, would Peter Cushing be turned on by Britt Eklund's dancing naked? So much so as Edward Woodward. I don't know. Lee was upset about the deletion of his death scene in the theatrical release of Return of the King, but was put in the extended edition.
Did Jackson ever say why that scene was cut? Because it makes no sense that it was cut.
I don't know whether any sort of official reason was given. I'm kind of wondering whether the sort of new line in the studio sort of hardlined, like, we're already pushing it at sort of 3 hours and 10 minutes. But basically Jackson sort of got his way by saying, well, I want to release, you know, the director's cut, you know, basically the intended versions. Which is why those box sets go for God knows how much money, both physically and digitally. Early in his career, Lee dubbed foreign films into English and other languages, including Monsieur Hulot's Holiday. Sometimes he dubbed all the voices, including women's parts. So he was the original inspiration for the Magic Roundabout then. When the English dubs of the Magic Roundabout happened, and the male person put on the voice to do all the things like the cow, come and truth the cow, like. In Lee's autobiography, he relates his first meeting with Peter Cushing during production of Curse of Frankenstein, in which he was the monster. Lee stormed into a dressing room where Cushing was sitting and angrily shouted, "I haven't got any lines," and Cushing replied, "You're lucky I've read the script." Vincent Price and Christopher Lee were born on the 27th of May, and Peter Cushing was born on the 26th. There you go. That even more connections between me and Peter Cushing. And technically Vincent Price and Christopher Lee, because there's only 24 hours difference. Yes! It all fits. Like Peter Jackson, Lee's appeared in films with 3 generations of Astons. I'm trying to remember if Lee's got any children. That means anything that's got an Aston now has to have a Lee kid, just in the thing. What would the Wi-Fi password on the train be?
I'm never gonna the Wi-Fi password question. I'm never gonna top what I said for Twin Peaks, so I can't answer this question anymore.
I mean, if we're being proper, like, Kraftwerk, given that it's the Trans-Siberian Express, so you know. Or who directed Trans-Siberian? You know, the film from like 15 years ago.
Brad Anderson. You talking about
Yeah.
the Kingsley one?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's Brad Anderson.
Something to do with that. I don't know. First thing I saw from Christopher Lee is, of course, as a kid, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. I mean, that's with a lot of his latter stuff. That's probably a decent one to actually experience him for the first time.
I'm pretty psyched to say my Christopher Lee introduction was Man with the Golden Gun.
It's, for me, it was probably either that or one of the Dracula films. I don't think it was the first one. It was like one of the later ones where I'm trying to remember. Was it the first one when he goes in the sort of frozen lake, or is that like the second or the third one of the Hammer ones?
I think that was a second or third one.
Because I sort of remember seeing that image. You know, when it must have been on TV, because I guess it was considered relatively not bad enough to like just put it on in the afternoon or whatever. I'm trying to think if it was
the thing that's kind of embarrassing to say is that I know his first Dracula movie and I know his last Dracula movie. In between, I don't remember what order they're in.
Yeah. It doesn't help as well when I sort of want to think about things. You lose track of like what they're called.
I mean,
Like
1972.
I think Curse of Frankenstein is known some places as Frankenstein, confusingly. Like Dracula and Horror of Dracula. I'm trying to.
I think 1972 was his next to last one, I think. And then other than that, I can't remember which one's which.
I'm trying to have a quick look, see if there's anything else. I may have seen him in maybe Gremlins 2?
Oh shit, yeah. Yeah, I saw Gremlins 2 before Man with the Golden Gun. That's right.
Probably, yeah. It probably would have been either that or Man with the Golden Gun or whatever that bit is from the the Dracula thing.
I forgot. I forgot Gremlins too. I'm wearing my fucking Gremlins shirt right now, and I forgot Gremlins too. Oh.
But yeah, that's probably what I'd say. Um, if there was a Horror Express, the train rooms should have Arrow as a streamer. Yeah. Who'd win in a fight, the missing link or the missing link from Missing Link? Well, again, he seems like a nice character, whereas Horror Express's missing link doesn't. Or maybe no, it says here it missing link versus Harry from Harry and the Hendersons. Again, if we're talking Horror Express missing link, Bloodbath. Then again, and that's one thing that I also thought was a nice touch that I didn't realize until sort of when I went through it a second time to work out why the English names at the start are so weird in some cases, like Gene Martin. What? Just when the creature goes for the kids, and I guess from its hand thing, like works out what's inside and basically realizes it's a kid. There's nothing in it. What's the point in taking the kid's knowledge? Which is kind of
Yeah,
also
because I
creepy.
doubt that was. Yeah, because I doubt that was a moment of mercy or anything. It was just a "you're not useful to me."
Which of the two scientist characters would win the Nobel Prize first? Lee's Lee's Saxton or Cushing's Doctor? Well, I want to
Well,
say
I would say,
with Lee being a professor and being part of the RGS, the Royal Geological Society. Then again, I guess Wells is as well. It's just he's only referred to as Doctor.
with if we're talking about the events after this, if Saxon takes responsibility for this, his reputation might be kind of fucked. Especially since I mean, they burned the evidence that he had a scientific discovery. All you have is a bunch of dead bodies.
Yeah, the crazy thing though is like whether they kept the actual specimen of blood from the microscope and whether that has enough power to
Yeah.
sort of start it all over again. Which brings me on to where most people may have seen this if they've been following Shudder the last couple of years, because it shows up in one of the Creepshow things from season 2, I believe. Looking into it, where Justin Long plays like this VR sort of guy that somehow gets transported into Horror Express because he programs it in, and they sort of Greg Nicotero directs it, and who is it that Dana Gould wrote it? But it was like some VR thing where Long's character was sort of put into Horror Express and wanted to have a relationship with I think the Countess, which at some points I wasn't sure whether they used the original footage or the actress, so that was like pretty well done. But as it all turns out, don't worry, darling style. This is all done because the guy doesn't want to be in a relationship with his actual wife, and then it carries over that the monster attacks her in the thing, and she manages to get out because there's like an escape button. But luckily, I mean, her eyes are sort of bleeding and whatever. So then she sort of realizes, oh, well, that's how I can get my one up on it, and that is she switches the sort of selection on the remote to Night of the Living Dead, and purposefully cuts off his thumb so he can't press the stop button. And I guess the implication is that he's mauled by zombies in Night of the Living Dead, because whatever happens, like happens real life, Nightmare on Elm Street style.
Yeah.
But at the same
I
point,
only
and I'm surprised that they didn't go with it. What if the powers of the alien in the film somehow carried over to her? I guess they don't really explain that part of the film in the presentation, because that would have been an extra ingenious thing. In like, now this alien entity is in the real world because of what happened with this bloody 1972 Spanish spaghetti horror, and left it open like that. But no, that was too easy. uh, the monster here sort of looks like William Hurt's transformation in altered state. Yeah,
no, but it's kind of going in the same direction with the missing link thing.
yeah, for sure. And Josephine also asked, just to clarify, are we or not having Pop the Question tomorrow, or are we not having them for the month? So yeah, the Q&A sessions are not happening until, look at the date, I think like the weekend of like the 12th and 13th of November. Once we're done with October and Halloween and the October awards predictions. But we'll give you notification on when the award stuff is. Probably next show in a couple of weeks. But yeah, all in all, I'll let you lead off, AJ, for final thoughts.
As far as just what I really like about this the most, I think, is when you look at these like low budget horror movies and how they like have a classic feel to them. I was talking before about how the first time I ever saw this movie was the public domain version, and I saw it in a car, so I didn't. and and I don't know how many people have seen like those, packs where you have all the public domain horror movies. The first thing you'll notice is that the sound is shit. So it getting like this whole sort of Blu-ray release after a while, I feel like was a very very helpful for this movie. And yeah, the thing about it though is about these movies like this is oftentimes when you read up on like their concepts and the kind of movie they are, they can sound really fun, but it's kind of shocking how many of them just end up being really boring and like I say, kind of meandering, and like they have a concept or an idea, and then it's just kind of shit. But this one finds a way to keep going, and like we were going to talk about, when it gets to a point to where it looks like it might start meandering, they drop Telly Savalas into it, and then we get a nice big climax. So this one really handles everything well as far as not backing itself into a corner or just banking on a concept and then not elaborating on it. So I find it really satisfying as like this sort of classic low budget horror movie in that sense. It's just not boring, and that's all I need,
Yeah,
really.
it's sort of annoying because like now having like properly sort of sat down and watched it for the first time, it's sort of one where I do feel maybe it would have benefited from Owen watching it, given that he is such a horror fan and whatever, and getting his take on it. I think there are better equivalents of around the 60s and 70s in that Hammer style that I'm holding on to till however many times we get to do horror films on here again. But it's an actual, like, for what it is, being sort of a, I don't want to say it's the Sergio Leone like of like spaghetti horror, but like it's surprisingly good for low budget European like money. It actually sort of has an interesting, probably helped by the fact that it is a loosely based off the became the Thing and whatever. So there's actual, and also I guess it was to some extent one of the first sci-fi horrors that probably would have got mainstream, because I don't know how big Thing from Another World would have been in the 50s. And obviously the other sort of sci-fi stuff like War of the Worlds wasn't really a horror, at least when it was done sort of in the 50s or 60s. It was sort of, it does feel like it was sort of one of the one of the first of its kind. I don't know why I'm bringing that up now, because it's final thoughts, but like it it does have that sort of element, like you can sort of see elements of like the Alien, well, sort of Alien-esque, you know, with the host sort of taking over John Hurt sort of thing, in sort of the brooding tension, even though that isn't really brooding tension, it's more I'm gonna throw up at the breakfast table, oh wait, chestburster. But at the time, a lot of it was sort of the traditional horror, so this going sort of the supernatural, extraterrestrial horror, I think is a nice sort of difference to the flow. So yeah, I'm surprised I made a good choice, or a decent choice. So that is your lot for this time. We will be back in 2 weeks. Thankfully, because there is no AEW pay-per-view this time, we'll be on our regularly scheduled day of the 15th of October to discuss AJ selection as we move forward 14 or 15 years to 1987. And, oh. No. Hang on, no. 20-something years to the Frighteners. Peter Jackson. It all connected. Well done, Christopher Lee.
And the Frighteners has an Aston in it, so
yeah, it's all connected. So, with that, thank you everybody for watching. Thanks to Josie, to Bry, the brief little showing of Spencer as well at the start, and for anybody lurking and watching along, either live and not commenting or watching us on archive. We thank you for viewing this. In terms of other stuff on the network, the archive of Owen Sip and Snacks and Voice of Liberty content is there. The archive of my gaming stuff and snack stashes is also around. AJ takes the reins for the rest of the month predominantly, with more spooky related verses and other stuff. Do we drop a tease for something that's coming in the next few days, maybe?
We got a couple of Stephen King things this week, and then the entirety of next week, from Sunday to Saturday, is a themed week. So there's that.
There you go. So
plus other things in between.
keep it tuned in to the channel. Like, comment, subscribe, ring the notification bell for all that. Also be notified of our stuff on the socials. You can find us on or the channel on Twitter/X on at Popcast Network. Owen, who also supplies you with like when things are going live and everything on at Their Own Disney. I'm over there at Ash Is My Name UK, doing various things here and there. AJ cannot be found on social media, and just like Keith Richards, cannot be killed by conventional weapons. So, question is he actually the entity? Does he have red eyes? Is he a knockoff Terminator, but just done 15 years before? Who knows? I mean, I hope we don't find out. But whoever. With that, thank you for watching, everybody. And until next time, beware.